Achron Shel Pesach, Tafshin Memches. This was a mamar that was lived by the Rebbe. One of the latest, not the last mamar of Achron Shel Pesach. The year is 1989. The Rebbe had delivered a mamar right before Pesach on Yud Gimel Nisan, which was a surprise. And Achron Shel Pesach again, he delivered a Hasidic discourse, a very, very short discourse. And the good news is, even though we're starting late, we can actually finish it today. V'hecherim havaya es l'shein yam Mitzrayim. So this is part of the Haftorah that we say on the last day of Pesach, on Achron Shel Pesach. Hashem is going to dry out the tongue of the Sea of Egypt. And this is a discussion in the Farshim what exactly this means. Some identify it as the Nile, Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, others identify it as a different river. It's called the tongue of the Sea of Egypt because it appears that it follows along the coastal plain, and initially it has seawater. Later on, the water, the rivers flow with fresh water, but this river is actually flowing with seawater, it's being fed by the sea. So Hashem is going to dry out this river b'ayim ruchei with the force of his wind, of the spirit of the wind. Umevar bezadmor Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash, who is also known sometimes as the Rebbe of Lechatchila Riber, explains at great length in a hemshech, a continuation of mamar, which is known famously as V'hechrim, because it begins with the words of Yeshayahu Hanavi here. The Neisef Shelo Asad Lavi Yiyu V'hechrim Geimer Es L'Shein Yam Mitzrayim, in addition to the notion that in the future, La'asad Lavi is the future that is yet to come, which is a euphemism for the Messianic era. So not only will there be this notion of God drying out the tongue of the Sea of Egypt, which this will be Dugmas Kriyas Yamsuf, this will be in the image of, a paradigm of the splitting of the Reed Sea, Shahoisa B'Yetzias Mitzrayim, which took place when the Jewish people left Egypt, Yiyegam V'Heinif Yodei Ala Nohar. There'll also be this idea, as the pasuk finishes, that Hashem will raise his hand, so to speak, over the river. The B'Kiyas HaNohar Hu L'Mayla Yeser Me B'Kiyas Hayam. The Rebbe Maharash explains in great detail how and why the splitting of a river is loftier, greater, and more profoundly miraculous than the splitting of the sea. Kimavur Sham Barucha, which we're not going to belabor because that's beyond the point of this morning's mamar. But in that mamar, it alights that Iker HaChidush La'asad Lavai, that the primary novelty of that future, which is yet to come, that then there will be the splitting of this river. So now you just have to take it on good faith that the Rebbe Maharash explains it, and you can go back and learn that mamar. But bottom line, it speaks of a much, much loftier, much higher, more profound form of miraculous event. Ukamesha Kasov, as it is written, and here we're being referred back to Tehillim, the book of Psalms, chapter 66, that it says there, Hafach Yam Layabosha, the sea was changed or turned into dry land. Banohar Yavru Barogel, they would walk through the river. So this pasuk is a very strange verse, because it starts off by saying, Hafach Yam Layabosha, that the sea was turned into dry land. And then a moment later it says, Benohar, not the sea, but we're talking about a river. And usually seas and rivers are very different places. Everything is different. The water is different. The style is different. The shape is different. Everything is different. It's very hard to make a mistake or interchange in the same sentence, sea and river. So why did David HaMelech do that? And the way that Rebbe Maharash explains it is that the pasuk was talking about two different events. Hafach Yam Layabosha, the changing or turning of the sea into dry land, that's Lashon Avar. That's past tense. Hafach, he changed. Hafach Yam Layabasha. This is what happened. The Koi, this refers Al Kriyas Yamsov to the splitting of the Reed Sea, Shahoisa Ba'Geula, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, which took place at the time of the Exodus when we left Egypt. However, the second half of the verse, Banohar Ya'avru Berogel, in the river they will go, they will cross by foot. which indicates that the river is not going to be a river anymore, because if you cross it by foot, it's not a river. So they're walking across the riverbed. But here it says, Hofach Yam Le'abasha, which is past tense. Whereas with regard to the river, it says, Banohar Ya'avru. It doesn't say Avru. It says Ya'avru. They will go. That's Lashon Asid. So the Rebbe Marash explains, the Koi al Bekiyas HaNohar Shatia Begula Hasida. This refers to a futuristic event. It refers to what Yeshayahu is referencing in the pasuk of Achron, that the river of Mitzrayim will be divided, will be split open, and that will happen in the future Messianic redemption. Uvenohar Yavru Berogel, and that they will walk through the river. Zehu Iker HaChidush. This is the primary novelty. Sheyiyah, which will unfold and be Begeula HaSida. So in this short paragraph, essentially what the Rebbe does is he contrasts the Egyptian exodus with the Messianic redemption. And he says that there are verses that speak about the Egyptian exodus. They speak about Yom, they speak about the sea dividing, the sea splitting open. And then there are verses that speak, or partial verses, that speak about a river dividing. And clearly the river dividing is futuristic. That speaks about the Messianic redemption. Whereas the sea dividing speaks about the Egyptian exodus. And they're juxtaposed. They find themselves in the same verse. Both in Yeshayahu, the verse that we read from Torah on the last day of Pesach, that it says, V'hechem avaya es l'shein ya Mitzrayim, v'heinif yodei ala nor, which this is an idea of what's going to happen. So we have this idea that the splitting of the sea or splitting of the river is not just a past tense, but it's actually a futuristic event. And then when we take a look in the book of Tehillim, where David HaMelech speaks both of Egyptian exodus as well as the future, the sea was turned into dry land, and then we have this idea of Banar Yavru. So the two are juxtaposed, and in Tehillim even found in the same verse, one after the other. The first half of the sentence speaks about the past, speaks about the Egyptian exodus. The second half of the sentence speaks about the Messianic redemption. For our purposes, what's relevant without the whole long hemshech of the mamar of the Rebbe Marash, what's relevant for our purposes is that there's a juxtaposition or direct lead-in from the Egyptian exodus directly into the concept of the Messianic redemption. That's clear? Yeah? See how... Okay. The Rebbe's mamar is based on that notion. He doesn't go into the details of how that works, but just entirely based on that notion, he builds on this juxtaposition of the past and the future, the Exodus and the Messianic redemption. The Yesh Leimer. So here's the Rebbe's fresh take on this idea, this previously articulated idea. The Zeh Sheveh Hechrim Goymer Yam Mitzrayim Mamshech Lazeh Takef, v'takef v'heinif yadi ala nor, that the fact that we go from v'hechrim, we talk about this idea of Hashem drying out the river of Egypt. And we talk immediately of v'heinif yadi ala nor, hulaheres. This is to indicate shemikriyas yamsuf v'inyonai shahoyu, that from kriyas yamsuf and from what was kriyas yamsuf and what it represented, B'haga'ula d'yetzias Mitzrayim, at the time of the exodus from Egypt, efsher lavei miyad, we can move seamlessly, b'li shum hefsek, without any kind of interruption, leveheinif yadei ala nar sheyiyah la'asid lavei, to the circumstances which are futuristic, have yet to have unfolded, but the idea, conceptually speaking, the ideas of, or the reality that will unfold in the future, when his hand will be raised over the river, and the way the pasuk describes in euphemistic terms what will happen when Mashiach comes, that there is a direct link, one leads directly into the other. In other words, like this. It has always been understood that Yetzias Mitzrayim is the beginning of a process. And it's a process that unfolds and eventually reaches its fruition, its maturation, only when Mashiach will come. So the Messianic redemption is the ultimate redemption, meaning that's where this builds to, and that the Geula Mitzrayim, the Egyptian exodus, is the beginning. It's the start of a process. It's always been understood. There's nothing new about that. That's as old as Torah itself. Certainly Chassidus emphasizes this time and again throughout the tapestry of Hasidic teaching, you have this idea that Yetzias Mitzrayim begins a process. It's a process that continues to unfold. It's a process that reaches its climax when Mashiach will come. The typical way of understanding this, though, is that there's a requisite, shall we say, various eras or requisite ideas that have to unfold until we get to the ultimate. So yes, the idea of going out of Mitzrayim, that's the beginning. That unleashes a process, it triggers a process, and then there's many parts of this process. And eventually, this process will lead us into a concept of a Messianic redemption. So for example, it says, Moshe hu goel Rishon, Moshe hu goel Achron. Moshe Rabbeinu is the first Redeemer, Moshe Rabbeinu is the final Redeemer. What's the obvious question? Oh, where's Moshe? Mashiach could come back from the dead. That's the Gemara says it can go either way. What's the obvious question? No. When has nothing to do with Moshe is the first Redeemer, Moshe is the last Redeemer? What's the obvious question? When a Yaakov Avinu, when our father Jacob blesses his sons, what does he bless Yehuda with? With monarchy. He says, V'lo yikasam. He's going to be the one.
So he's not a David king. He's not a king.
He's not Davidic. He's not for the tribe of Yehuda. Yeah. Moshe Rabbeinu is? If we have to give him an Aliyah, a Levi, thank you. Moshe is a Levi. How can a Levi be Redeemer in time of Mashiach? That needs to be the tribe of Yehuda. Every Shevet has its own style. Every Shevet has its own unique spiritual persona, and the DNA of Yehuda is suited for the concept of Messianic redemption. So what's the answer? The answer is that Moshe Rabbeinu begins a process. And the Rebbe explains at length in a number of different dissertations that it's the idea of Moshe that begins the process, and that ultimately leads us into the redemption through Mashiach. So Moshe hu goel Rishon means that it's only because of what Moshe Rabbeinu started that all of this can take place in the end. I'm glossing over a very complex and nuanced idea. But the point we're trying to make is there's nothing new about the approach to redemption. And we say from redemption to redemption that there is a direct line that links the two. What the Rebbe is saying here, which is new, is that line can be immediate. It doesn't have to be all kinds of other things in between. Mitzrayim can lead directly, Exodus can lead directly into redemption. What does this mean? That's a good question. I'll try to figure that out now. So the way the Rebbe speaks about this, he's speaking about it in the present. He said, "Ubefrat ba'Achron Shel Pesach," especially here we are on the last day of Pesach. Shabboi Oimrim Haftorah be'inyan Gulu Hasidah, whose Haftorah speaks not about the past and not about a prior celebration of Pesach, like the Haftorahs, for example, of the first 2 days of Pesach, which speak about various dramatic celebrations of Pesach, whether the first celebration of Pesach when the Jewish people come into the land of Eretz Yisrael, or whether in Yeshayahu Melech where they experience incredible renewal and they celebrated Pesach. These were memorable celebrations of Pesach. But rather, the Haftorah on the last day of Pesach doesn't speak about Pesach at all. It doesn't speak about any kind of prophecy that references in any real way the Exodus from Egypt. It's all talking about the future. And we know there's a custom from the Baal Shem Tov, Achron Seudas Mashiach. We eat a Seudah, which is called the Feast of Mashiach. V'zeh ba behemshech. Where does Achron Shel Pesach come? The last day of Pesach, the 8th day of Pesach. Where does it come from? What does it follow? It follows Shvi Shel Pesach. 7 leads into 8. It's not the 7th day of Pesach, and then the 87th day is going to be the idea of Seudas Mashiach. So there's this, Sfiras Ha'omer kind of thing, where one day leads to the next, and eventually a whole chain of descent, until in the end, then you reach the idea of Messianic redemption. Then we go from Shvi Shel Pesach, which is the climax, the ultimate, the fruition, the maturation of the Exodus. The Jewish people are finally finished with the Egyptians, which is the simple reason why we included in Dayenu. We talked about Kriyas Yamsuf because till Kriyas Yamsuf, the Egyptians could pursue us. Not only they could pursue us, they did pursue us. So the Jewish people were in fear of their captors. The captors had come after them. So Shvi Shel Pesach ultimately is the end of the Exodus. The Exodus is incomplete until Shvi Shel Pesach. So the Shvi Shel Pesach is when we celebrate the completion of the Exodus. And the very next day, we're talking about Mashiach. We're having a Seudah of Mashiach. And it comes directly from Shvi Shel Pesach, from Kriyas Yamsuf. So this further emphasizes the notion that there is a connection between the Gilui, the revelation of Geula HaSida, and the concept of Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. When does the Exodus, the Egyptian Exodus, come to its completion? Shvi Shel Pesach. Until Shvi Shel Pesach, the Exodus is incomplete. Yeah, there was Moira Gadol, there was a crazy, incredible, awesome revelation on the night of Pesach. We leave the next morning, but the Exodus is ongoing. The Exodus doesn't end until Shvi Shel Pesach. So it's impossible to talk about Mashiach before Shvi Shel Pesach because we're still talking about the Exodus. We're still commemorating Exodus. We're still talking about the Egyptian Geula. But the moment it ends, which is on Shvi Shel Pesach, what do we talk about the very next day? Sudat Mashiach. The very next day. Not that it's 7 weeks later, half a year later. Immediately, the very next day, when we finish celebrating Egyptian Exodus, which is Kriyas Yamsov, without Kriyas Yamsov, you have no Exodus, because the Exodus is still incomplete. The Egyptian Exodus only completes on the 7th day, and immediately the next day, we're talking about Mashiach already.
We actually stepped the whole night.
You know how to turn the light on? You know how to turn the light on? No? The light on.
Needs to turn on Do Not Disturb, so you won't be interrupted by a phone call.
We're having a bumpy live transmission over here.
Turn on Do Not Disturb.
All right, so let's continue. So what happens then is Kriyas Yamsuf becomes a direct link into Geula Ha'asida, into the future redemption. Umikivan shesmichos zoi hi chelek mei Torah. Since this juxtaposition, this closeness, this immediate succession of the 7th day of Pesach into the 8th day of Pesach is a part of Torah. It says it in the Torah. It's a Torah idea. So therefore, when we talk about Torah, immediately we're talking about something which is Yerusha, an inheritance, l'kol echad v'echad miYisrael. As it is written in the Pasuk, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Meirasha kilas Yaakov. Torah tziva Hashem, Moshe commanded us the Torah, which is a morasha, which is an inheritance for the congregation of Jacob. When an inheritance means that it comes without effort, inheritance means comes without toil, inheritance means that it comes without virtue, an inheritance comes to a baby who is an hour old. He's just born, he could have inherited a fortune. By virtue of what did he inherit the fortune? Hard work, a degree, connections with the lawyers. By what did he inherit it? By virtue of the fact that he is an heir. Nothing more. Doesn't need anything more. Just by virtue of the fact that he is. So it is with every single yid. By virtue of the fact that you are, you inherit the entire Torah. And this refers to Anashim, Nashim V'taf. It refers to men, women, and children. There's no difference. Each and every member of Am Yisrael is equally Jewish. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit Jewish. That's it. You're Jewish, you got the whole Torah. That's the way it is. That's the meaning of Meirasha. So if there's a Torah idea, that means the Rebbe then kind of develops this idea. If it's a Torah idea, any Torah idea necessarily belongs to all of us, because it's part of the Torah. So if it's part of the Torah, it has to belong to all of us in a manner of Meirasha. So what does that mean then? That means if there's a Torah idea that we can go lovey, Mikriyas Yamsov, that we can go from the splitting of the sea, take it from Miyad Mamash L'Gula Asida. We can go immediately from there into the future redemption, without even the blink of an eye. So you would say, maybe a big tzaddik is some very righteous man, a woman who lives in a very high place and elevates their consciousness. They're able to absorb the energy of the Exodus in such a profound way that from the Exodus they go immediately into the highest of levels. But regular people, it's like there's a process, you can't just jump. You can't just go from one level to the beginning of Exodus to all of a sudden the highest level of redemption. It's not realistic. But the fact is that that's how it's laid out in the Torah. That's how it's arranged in the Torah. So if it's arranged that way in the Torah, then it's part of our inheritance. If it's part of our inheritance, it belongs to every single one of us. And from the Rebbe's very unusual perspective, he says, therefore, this teaches us that it's within the purview, it's with the wherewithal of every single Jew, that every one of us can, in a blink of an eye, once you experience Exodus from Egypt, which is a personal obligation, something you're supposed to do all the time, once you experience Exodus from Egypt, that you are prepared right away, immediately, for the future redemption. And this is further emphasized from the fact that along with the Haftorah of Achron Shel Pesach, which is V'nocha Olav Ruach Havaya, we talk about the idea of the Spirit of God will rest upon him. The Olav, who's Olav? Olav Kayal Mashiach. This refers to Mashiach, as the pasuk earlier says, "V'yetze chayter migeza Yishai." A shoot will come forth from the root of Yishai, from the trunk of Yishai. And despite the fact that this is a verse that's found in the Haftorah of Achron Shel Pesach that specifically refers to Mashiach, despite that fact, Afal Pikein Tiknu Shekol Echad MiYisrael Yemer B'Yamtiv. Every single one of us says this in our holiday prayer, in our service, Betfilo Sha'imrim Be'ez Psichas Ha'aron, in the prayer that's recited when the ark is open, which gives it added meaning. It's not just a prayer. It's not just recited on the shul. It's added when the ark is open. Special prayers are said then. We say, V'yiskayim Banu Mikra Shekasov. It should be fulfilled in us. The pasuk that says, V'nach Olav Ruach Havaya. The Spirit of God will rest upon him. What does that mean? That means that the Spirit of God, which is supposed to rest on the person who will be anointed to redeem the whole world, the Mashiach, we ask that it should be fulfilled with us. Is every one of us putting forward his name to run for Mashiach? Are we running for Mashiach? Are we hoping we're all Mashiach? Haino, what does it mean? It means Shebakol Echad MiYisrael B'tur Prat, amongst each and every one of us, not only as part of the Jewish people, so as part of Am Yisrael, Mashiach represents all of us, and therefore V'yiskayim Banu Mikra means that in a microcosmic way, we're somehow connected to this grander flame, to this bigger idea. No, that each and every one of us, as an individual, Yiyu HaGilui, there will be some kind of marvelous, mystical, incredible revelation, in a way that the Spirit of Hashem rests upon him. In Kola Pratim Shebeksuv Mela, with all the details of this pasuk, which includes Vehinif Yadi, he'll raise his hand over the river. In other words, from the Rebbe's illuminated perspective, the way he looks at every single Yid has Messianic properties. Every single Yid is capable of going from an ordinary Yitzias Mitzrayim, where you're stuck in Meitzara Mugvulim, in the most extreme kinds of realities that inhibit, obscure, squeeze, disable, Mitzrayim. And you can go out of this Mitzrayim, and the moment you go out of this Mitzrayim, you're ready for Mashiach. Like, you go from 0 to 120. You go from the bottom, from the beginning of the journey, there is the possibility of extreme acceleration. And you can go the next step. Step 1 can lead you into the final step. And that's within the purview of every single Yid. It's like hard to believe. They tell a story once. There was a young lady who commissioned a portrait of herself. She was going home for the holidays. So she was carrying the portrait. She didn't want to put it underneath, carrying it onto the plane. These days you can get a black eye for doing something like that. But those days the airlines were a little friendlier. So she's going onto the plane. It's this beautiful portrait that she's going to give her parents a picture. And it was a present for the holidays. And a young man goes by and he looks at the painting and he says, "Wow, she's beautiful. Is anybody she anybody you know?" It's a joke. Hello? In other words, the portrait looked fantastic, but didn't look like the girl. Like the guy's looking at the portrait, the girl, he doesn't recognize that it's the same person. Right? So sometimes the Rebbe is painting like a portrait of what a Yid is, and we hear this portrait, and we're like, "This is amazing. Who is this amazing person?" So this is you. This is me. Like Rebbe, trust me. This is not me. I know me. The Rebbe says, "You don't know who you really are. Let me tell you who you really are." Only a tzaddik who has X-ray vision, who has night vision goggles, can see through all the darkness, look at you and say, "Let me tell you who you really are." And the Rebbe is telling us who we really are in a way that nobody ever said before. Nobody ever saw this in a Yid. Nobody, at least nobody talked about it. Nobody ever said that every single Yid is capable of going from 0 to 120. Like boom, put your foot on the gas, and you're going from a wheelbarrow. You're all of a sudden in the jet age. That's what the Rebbe says. We're talking about Messianic redemption. And it goes right after, one right after the other.
When we come out of our exodus, it's Hashem that takes us out.
Hashem takes you
We have
out.
to do our part.
Hashem takes you out only when you do your part. Exactly. Right. So when a person will say he did his part, he knocked himself out, he did things which are really difficult for him, and then Hashem is kind, Hashem takes us out, then, okay, there's a process. Eventually I could become a perfect paradigm of holiness, of spirituality, of what a Yid is supposed to be. I'm saving up. No, you are right there. So who in whose hands is this? So you saying Hashem. The Rebbe says, "Ein hadavar tali ela b'ma'aseinu v'avedasenu." It's in our hands. It's in our hands. What do you have to do to get there? Very simple. The Rebbe says, "Ayidei asiyas hamitzvah kedeboi," doing a mitzvah right. That's a very little big word, right. Kedeboi, as it's meant to be. Nasa geula. Every mitzvah is a redemptive agent. Every mitzvah is a redemptive moment. It's geula hapratis shel mekayim ha-mitzvah. When you fulfill that one mitzvah, but you do it right, what happens is that mitzvah is it triggers and unleashes a power, a redemptive power. And the mekayim ha-mitzvah, the person who's doing that mitzvah, who is stuck within the framework of a material, terrestrial, flesh and blood reality, when he or she does the mitzvah and does it right, at that moment, your soul is soaring because you're doing a mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah, you're connected to Hashem. Connected to Hashem, you're freed from all of this. That puts you in a state of true freedom. Like it explains in the Geras HaKedesh, on the Pasuk, Pada b'shalom nafshi, that as long as you do your mitzvah, that's it, Hashem redeems your soul in peace. So this is amazing. What do we need to do to get there? To receive this, to get there? What do we need to do? Just a mitzvah. Right. That's all. Just do a mitzvah right. Every mitzvah is this incredible nuclear power. It's a nuclear moment. It's not a Moab bomb. It's a nuclear bomb. It bombs away, it gets rid of all the Gashmias. And that moment, if the mitzvah is done right, if you release that energy that's harnessed in a mitzvah, amazing things can happen. And when you look at it this way, you understand what the Rebbe wanted with the mitzvah, with the mitzvah campaigns. So what do you tell people? Say, you did a mitzvah with somebody. He didn't change. He didn't become frum. He didn't become a changed person. He did a mitzvah. He says, do you know what a mitzvah is? When you put a mitzvah and a yid together, this is like, it's a nuclear moment. It would be nice if this would carry on. Okay, so try to do another mitzvah. Just keep doing mitzvahs. If you just keep doing mitzvahs, then there's no time to get stuck, fall back into Mitzrayim in between. And as long as you keep doing mitzvahs right, so then you're released, you're free. V'yesh lahaisef, the Rebbe says we could take this even further. Shegeula hapratis, the pada b'shalom nafshi, which happens al yedei kiyum ha-mitzvah. This is amazing. This doesn't happen through deep meditation. It doesn't happen through profound Torah study, necessarily. Those are mitzvahs too. But it happens through the performance of a simple mitzvah, what seems to be a simple mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah right, it's not only at the time of performing the mitzvah. There's a residual and continuous effect of the mitzvah afterwards. Like it explains in Tanya, primarily in chapter 25, with regard to the union, the communion, the oneness that's affected, that's created through the performance of a mitzvah. So when you do a mitzvah, there's a particular frame in time in which the mitzvah is performed. That frame in time is frozen forever. In other words, in our reality, the vicissitude and unfolding of time necessitates that we can only be in one frame at a time. I can only be in the present. I can never be in the past. I can't even be in the future. I can only be in the present. And it's always moving. It never stands still for a second. So the most important moment in life is always the present. Now, that's very nice, good cliche. It actually is a little bit true. However, from Hashem's perspective, all of time is equal. The past is as real as the present, which is as real as the future. Why is the present important to Hashem? Because now you're making a choice. So since you're making a choice, Hashem invested everything in your choice, and therefore He's rooting for you and wants you to make the right choice. But in theory, when somebody did something, you say, that's the past. That's the was. So what do you mean that was? Whatever was is. Every ounce, every moment, every iota of goodness, every frame of time in which somebody did a mitzvah is frozen for eternity. That frame is here forever. Not in our world, not in our reality, because we're stuck in the here and now reality. But Hashem doesn't have that reality, doesn't have the limitation. Time is a construct. So when you don't have the construct of time, every frame of time is a moment in eternity. And therefore that moment in eternity is a yichud zelamayla. This, when you do a mitzvah, you create this oneness. You peel away, you get rid of the apparent division, the seeming apartness that we have from Hashem, which is the result of tzimtzum, of Hashem's concealment and divine self-contraction. And then we kind of like, we pierce that veil. We experience a moment of oneness and a moment of weightlessness. And when we experience that moment, that yichud, that oneness, that moment, that magic moment is nitzchi la'olam vad. It's eternal. Nobody can ever take that away from you. The moment you did a mitzvah is yours forever. Can never be removed. It's a yichud l'mayla. It's maybe not on earth, but it's on high. And the very fact that you have a bank account, if you will, you have a moment, a frozen moment. That moment is yours. That frame is yours. So that frame, the fact that frame is there, even if you can't access it in a tangible way, in a way that is profound as the future is, but still, the fact that you did this mitzvah, you're a different kind of person. It's like a person, once he or she does a certain thing, you're changed forever. You can't undo that. The fact that that happened, this is poil gam ala adam lamata, even though we don't sense it and feel it in its fullest and truest iteration, but nonetheless, it does have an effect on a person. And therefore, a person had a bris milah once upon a time, it makes a difference. A person did a mitzvah once upon a time. That mitzvah that was done is not just a thing of the past. There is an effect, a residual effect that continues to resonate, to illuminate a person's life. So if that's true about the mitzvah itself, the Rebbe now extends this and say, if it's true about the mitzvah, then it should be true also about the effect of the mitzvah. The effect of the mitzvah, as we have discussed it here in this mamar, is redemptive. A mitzvah affects a redemptive reality. That's the nature of mitzvah. Mitzvah brings about redemption. So if mitzvah brings about redemption, then the redemptive energy, the redemptive reality engendered by the mitzvah is also there permanently. It's nitzchi. It's eternal. It's l'mayla v'gam l'mata. It's on high and also down below. Shaga'ula hapratis sha'yidei kiyum mitzvah. I'm skipping the parentheses. So the redemption, the personal redemption that happens by the performance of a mitzvah, hinimsheches upayeles b'meshech kol yemei chayav. It continues to have an effect on a person for all the days of his life. B'chai hayom yom, in everyday life. Umizeh bayim gam l'geula klolos. So if a personal moment of redemption, and there's this idea of personal redemption, means redeeming your own personal spark. If a personal redemption can be something that has a lasting effect, so then we can speak about this in a more global sense. And we could talk about the idea that the mitzvah can lead us to a point where we are ready for the concept of not just microcosmic, but cosmic redemption. That the kingdom belongs to God, which means all of reality is forever transformed. So this is really heavy stuff. This is like the power of a mitzvah. Who knew? Who knew one mitzvah has such a power? It could change a person forever. In addition to the notion that all things about Torah mitzvahs, which is termed ma'aseinu v'avedasenu, our efforts and our action, that in addition to the well-worn idea that all of our mitzvahs, all of our efforts in Yiddishkeit directly lead into a cosmic transformation, a future, a Messianic future, there is a greater, this is true to a greater extent when it's things which are directly connected to the coming of Mashiach. That is to say, every mitzvah is redemptive in nature. Whether it's giving a person a loan, whether it's eating an ounce of matzah, whether it's fixing a mezuzah, whether it's lighting Shabbat candles, every mitzvah, every single mitzvah is redemptive in nature. Yet there are certain things we do in the framework of our Yiddishkeit which are directly linked to Mashiach. And amongst those customs is the custom of eating Sudas Mashiach on the last day of Pesach, and the drinking of 4 cups of wine on the last day of Pesach, at the Suda. The Kemoish Dalat Kaises Shalelis Harishain is the Pesach, just like the 4 cups which you drink on the first nights of Pesach at the Seder. Him Keneged Dalat Lashenis Shel Geula, they correspond to the 4 expressions of redemption, which are articulated in the Torah. Al derech zeh gamba dalat cases to seudas Mashiach. So too, a similar idea is captured and reflected in the 4 glasses which are drunk at the Suda of Mashiach on Achron Shel Pesach, sheim shayachim legeula asida, that they are uniquely linked to the future redemption. How? What does that mean? So one possible explanation is al pi habiyurim bahashaychas the geula asida ledalat cases, based on the connection between the futuristic redemption and the 4 cups, which are connected to the Dal L'Shenis HaGeula D'La'aseh Lavei, which are also connected to 4 different expressions in the Torah that speak not only about Exodus from Egypt, but also about Messianic redemption. V'hageula ha'asida hareitiyeh me'arba kanfei saaretz. The future redemption is also linked to the number 4, because we talk about Hashem redeeming the Jewish people from 4 corners of the earth. This is a euphemism, all different directions. In the time of Mitzrayim, we were all in the same place. There was no ingathering per se. But the future through Mashiach will require an ingathering. And the future through Mashiach that requires an ingathering is necessarily referenced as four-directional. And perhaps you can go even further. The fact that the cups of wine that are drunk at Sudas Mashiach, as the Rebbe Rashab instituted, that this is the same number of the cups of wine that we drink by the first nights of Pesach. Hula Ramez, this is to indicate that each and every year has the ability to leap directly from the Yetziah Mitzrayim, from the Egyptian Exodus, and the 4 cups drunk that commemorate the Egyptian Exodus, L'Geula Asida, to the future redemption, which we're talking about now on the last day of Pesach. And this refers to Geula Bepashtos, in the most literal way, in the most straightforward way. Especially because our actions are like, metaphorized as nanas agabe anok, like a midget on the shoulders of a giant. Because everything we do is not seen in isolation, but everything we do comes as a continuation. Which comes as a continuation of the Avodas Hashem that was promulgated by the Rabbeim, and the Rebbe wanted to mention all of the Rabbeim, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Shmaseden, and the Friedrich Rebbe. So bevadai, certainly, that it's the koyach of our activities, including the activity of eating Sudas Mashiach and drinking the 4 cups of wine, to bring us immediately into a cosmic redemptive state with a blink of an eye. And the Rebbe finishes off with a bracha that all this should happen, not just in theory, but in the concrete. Not in the abstract, in the concrete, that we should actually see Mashiach at Mashiach Suda, and that all of this should happen through the idea of Mashiach Suda's idea of internalizing, just like when we eat, it becomes a part of us. So too, we should internalize the energy, the redemptive energy, and in a state of simcha v'tu levav, without being withheld even for a moment, we should finally experience that redemptive moment. So this is really holy stuff. This is like, very, very, very lofty. It almost seems unpractical. It almost seems that Rebbe is talking about something in the highest heavens, right? Like I said, you look in the mirror and say, who is he talking about? Right? But the Rebbe says he's talking about us. The Rebbe says he's talking about every one of us.
So how does a mitzvah done 40 years ago accelerate redemption today?
How does a mitzvah done 40 years ago accelerate redemption today? How about a mitzvah done almost 4,000 years ago accelerating redemption today? The answer is that every mitzvah is at a moment of eternity. It's a moment of goodness. And all of good is accumulative. And because all of good is accumulative, whatever you have now has been accumulated. If you wouldn't have had that mitzvah 4,000 years ago, how would you accumulate? How would you get to where you are today?
That's a cheshbon.
That's one cheshbon. Another cheshbon, that's a simple cheshbon. The simple calculation is, this is a sum total. How does the person get to $1 million? By collecting pennies. But on a deeper level, the Rebbe says that every mitzvah performed is a moment in eternity. And because it's a moment in eternity, what was done in the past is not just the past. Averos can be vaporized, but mitzvahs will last forever. No matter what you do, the mitzvah you did is there forever. So every mitzvah is so powerful. I think if you live with this kind of consciousness, if this is what you're thinking about, if this is where your head is, the next time you have a challenge, should I or shouldn't I? How will you not? I think that's what the Rebbe was trying to affect. I think that's the Rebbe was trying to pick us up to a point where instead of wrestling with the Yetzer Hara and kind of getting stuck in the nitty-gritty, in the minutia of sin, they picked us up to such a high level. And once you re-engineer your perspective, so as long as you keep thinking about this, how could you? Do you know what's at stake here? Do you know what's at hand here? Do you know every mitzvah is? You know how powerful a mitzvah is? So it's a way of order. It's a way of great light. It's not the wrestling with the darkness. They have picked us up to a point of such illumination that it eclipses everything. It just automatically vaporizes the negativity. And I think, what do I know? But I think that Rebbe knew that we're in a state that the way to go is positivity and light, without dealing with darkness, without sitting and wrestling with the details. Just like to pick yourself up to a place that is so much loftier, so much higher, that the silly behavior or the inappropriateness just fades away. It's just not for us. Anyway, much could be said about it, but that's in a nutshell the mamar.